We all have faith. Some faith is blind, some faith is reasoned, some faith is religious, some faith is not. But we all have faith because we all need to have conviction despite the possibility of doubt. The question is, when we dig down into the layers of our faith, what do we find? This presentation follows on from 2 previous videos about faith, but now we're going to go one level deeper into the philosophy of faith and the fundamental dividing point between 2 different kinds. To begin with, what is faith? Faith is trust, and in the final analysis, faith is a choice. Faith is the choice we make when we consider a belief, and despite any possibility of lingering doubt, despite our ability to reject it, we say, I'm going to believe it anyway. I will have conviction in this belief. I will even live my life as if it is true. We all live by faith, whether we admit it or not, because the truth is that we must all commit ourselves to life. We must all live, even if doubts remain. And what's more, we must live by faith, because there is no belief that cannot be doubted. It might be unwise to doubt all beliefs, it might even be irrational, but it is still ultimately possible to withhold our acceptance of any belief that we encounter. And for this reason, faith pervades the entire life of the mind. It is the purpose of this presentation to say that faith has a cascading effect. Beliefs are built upon beliefs, commitments upon commitments, and when we dig down, we can uncover a foundation, a fundamental faith that shapes the entire edifice of belief. And it is our contention that this fundamental faith ultimately comes in 2 kinds. A faith in a reality of order, and an attempted faith in a reality which is, ultimately, chaos. To do this, we will need to investigate a particular chain of thinking. But before we do that, let's first be clear about our terms. Order is here defined by the arrangement of things, and the relationship of these arrangements. Thus, when we talk about order existing or talk about a principle of order, we mean not only that these relationships exist, but that there is some shared law that they abide by. Consider, you can have 2 creatures so wildly different as the hamster and the hippopotamus, but they are both subject to the same laws of physics and living by the same rules of biology. You can have 2 people as wildly different as Aristotle and Amy Schumer, but they are still subject to the same mortal laws of death and taxes. That is to say that when there is order, things might be different and the truth might be very complex, but order entails that there is nonetheless an underlying complement, a coherency, a consistency. Chaos, then, is not this. Chaos is here defined as a lack of order. Chaos entails that there is, ultimately, no complements, no coherency, no consistency between things, neither a common arrangement nor common principle, just an array of parts that happen to collide with each other on the whim of chance. Well, not even a whim, because a whim would at least vaguely imply intention, which would at least imply an order. And so, chaos is a lack of order. The question here is not whether some things in reality may be meaningfully called chaotic. Clearly, some parts of reality cohere with others, and some don't. The question is whether reality itself, at its most fundamental level, is based upon a principle of order or not. Now, to understand this in relation to faith, we must here shift our focus and consider a dialogue, which goes something like this. Marcus. Is the universe a domain of order or a domain of chaos? Darius. Surely it is a domain of chaos. Look at how much change and disorder there is in the world. Behold the barbarism of men. Behold the constant change of nature. Does she not dress the trees at one moment and strip them naked in the next? She does indeed, but even as each tree differs and the seasons change, do they not do so according to some order? Do our crops not die and grow with such consistency, that we can order our lives and our very civilization around them? As for the barbarism of man, yes, men make chaos of human law, or perhaps human law itself may at times be chaos. But does not the barbarism itself have a particular logic to it? Are all barbaric societies so categorically different? Do we not see barbarism, in all its forms, veering towards the same state of squalor, ignorance, and fear? And, heaven mark them, are not these barbaric men still ordered as men? Do they not live under the same stars which themselves move according to the same celestial laws? Do they not eat and breathe and die by the same order as civilized men do? But this is not enough to conclude that the universe is not chaotic. Perhaps they are merely accidents, exceptions to the rule. Perhaps there are things yet unseen which prove that chaos is the true law of all. My good friend, I answer that it cannot be. If the universe rested on a foundation of true chaos, even the few things we see would slip into absurdity. There simply would not be any order at all in the dance of the stars, the flow of the seasons, or in the lives of men if the very fabric of reality itself were sheer disarrangement, disorder, and chaos. This disorder itself must find order to give rise to order. But how can pure chaos find a principle of order if it already lacks a principle of order? What mad noise are we even trying to give credence to with this phantom arrangement of words? No, order can give rise to order. It can even leave room for chaos if the order is in some part diminished or unraveled. But chaos itself cannot give rise to order. It is purely dead and stagnant. If the universe was built upon chaos, there would be no order in it. But there is order in abundance, evidenced even by the fact that we can have this very conversation. Therefore, the universe is a domain of order. Then I concede that the universe is a domain of order. But I contend that this source is ordered. I contend instead that chaos is the source of the universe. It is out of chaos that this order first emerged. But surely you see this cannot be, for reasons that have already proven impossible. If chaos is, in its nature, a lack of order, there is no order in it. There would not even be the principle of order. If such a principle did exist, in some sense, then this chaos you speak of would simply not be chaos. I say, I really think this is all too arrogant. I think you say too much. Should we not withhold our judgments and conclusions? Should we not always be open to doubt? Despite the fact that we see with our senses and deduce with our reason that the universe must be ordered, and that the source must be ordered, or even perhaps that the source of the source must be ordered, can you or I not hold out the possibility that somewhere in the universe, or in the source of the universe, or in the source of the source, that there is some truth, some principle, not yet imagined, and perhaps not even imaginable, never to be seen, which nonetheless proves that it is not order, but indeed chaos that is the final law? But, my friend, to call something a law is already to call it a thing of order. So, this self-denying principle, this sentiment that denies all sense and all possible reason, is this something that you would stake your entire life on? If so, I suppose you have given an appropriate sermon for one who would have chaos as his law and master. You might think that this dialogue is hyperbolic, ridiculous, a caricature. But the truth is that I've had exactly this kind of dialogue in real life. Whilst we use different terms, it circled back to the same fundamental logic, and so I would like to bring that to your attention. The universe is a domain of order. Yes. And the universe is also a domain of cause and effect. Yes. Everything causes something else. The universe is a domain of order, but even with that order, we see nothing in the universe of cause and effect that has the power to cause itself. Yes. And so the universe must come from a principle of order to have this arrangement in the first place. But it must also come from some other power, some other source that itself does not need to be caused, but is able to cause and give order to everything else. Well, that sounds a lot like God. Yes. But there is no reason or evidence for God. You have just been presented with reason based on evidence. No, because maybe the universe caused itself, even if the parts cannot be self-causing. But the universe simply is the sum total of all its parts, and no amount of caused things can come together to make an uncaused thing. It's not just a difference of quantity, but of kind. The two things are fundamentally different. No amount of contingency makes necessity. To say otherwise is simply irrational. Now, you're just being arrogant. You don't know that. How so? Maybe there's an emergent property. Maybe there's some way that caused things can combine to make something uncaused. Or maybe somewhere inside the universe, in some place that we can't even imagine or even posit with our reason, in some place we will never see, there is something other than, quote, God, that explains everything. You're not considering the possibilities. You conclude too much. You're not skeptical enough. You don't have enough doubt. But we are talking about a principle of order, a power of order which is not confined to the universe of cause and effect. To call him God is just to give him his proper name. So what you're arguing is that the universe might not need to come from this principle of order. Instead, it might come from chaos, which is irrational. Or you say that an uncaused thing somehow comes from the universe of caused things, which is irrational. Or that this source of the universe was somehow already inside the universe and subject to it before the universe existed, which is irrational. Or that the ordering power itself was created by something else and then placed inside the universe and then gave shape to it. But if this ordering power is supposed to be the source of all order to begin with, without it the only thing that you are left with is pure chaos. And so you're claiming that pure chaos gave rise to order. Well, maybe it did. Who are we to say? We have a right to doubt, do we not? Can't you just say, I don't know? So, after claiming that you cannot have faith in God because there is no reason or evidence for his existence, and despite being given reason based on the evidence of cause and effect itself, you are claiming that we should instead hold out for belief in something that we do not and cannot have evidence for, and that completely defies all rational thought. Hypocrisy. It all ends in hypocrisy. But more on that in a moment. First, as you can see, you can push an argument to a point, push it again, push it down to its first principles, and then one is forced to consider, is truth underpinned by truth? Will I accept that reason itself is based on reason? Or will I ultimately say that underneath all of my rules for reason and consistency and meaningful answers, there is ultimately a foundation less than sand? A foundation that is disordered, inconsistent, and utterly meaningless. Strange questions, no? But I'm sure they sound familiar. After all, this fundamental faith and the hypocrisy it breeds can be seen all over the modern world, dressed up in so many eloquent garments. We see it particularly in the modern schools of relativism, nihilism, and in many of the discussions around language. The relativist will say, we should be rational and consistent. What we call truth itself is arbitrary, always uncertain, and cannot be universal. Whilst we order truth from place to place, we know its foundations are chaos. And of course, we are certain that this fact is both true and universal. The nihilist will say, if we are being rational and honest in the pursuit of truth, we ought to admit that meaning, like truth, is arbitrary and untethered. Whilst we might order a sense of meaning in our lives, we must admit that its foundations are chaos. And of course, I say this with the conviction that honesty really is meaningful, that consistency is meaningful, and, in a word, that the entire discussion about truth is something that produces real, meaningful answers. And then the modern language magicians will say, language is merely arbitrary. It's not ultimately about order, but chaos. In the end, no one can really understand each other. And of course, I say all of this whilst assuming that you can understand me. And thus they make a circus of the whole thing. A humour so dry that it makes the driest of British humour look like fresh spring water. With stone faces they say so much which is so utterly absurd. Hypocrisy. And most seem completely unaware of it. Then again, a great many men tend to be but half-conscious of most of their commitments. Whilst such people go about arguing against truth and meaning, they will proceed through life as if all kinds of things are absolutely true and meaningful. And the most avowed skeptic in his denial of faith will live and breathe each day on his faith-based convictions. And so, that's what it all comes down to. The two fundamental faiths. The faith in order, that a universe of truth is built upon ultimate truth, that reason perceives a rational order, which itself accords with reason, and the faith that, even if we do not have the final proof given the limited beings we are, we can still have the utmost faith that reality ultimately coheres. Then there is faith in chaos, of truthless truth, of irrational reason, of meaningless meaning, in which we try to make coherent claims in a fundamentally incoherent universe. Those are the two ultimate choices, the two final commitments that the entire life of the mind come down to. Yet, as you see, these two positions are not symmetrical. They do not stand as equals. One is self-consistent, the other is self-defeating. One lives, the other commits suicide. Whilst a man can walk through life with a faith in order and consistently justify his belief in truth, reason, and meaning, a man cannot do the same with his faith in chaos. He can only, ultimately, live as a hypocrite. And all the while he will, at some deep level, be at odds with himself, and with reality. What, then, is to be done? Nothing can be done from the outside. The arguments can be made, the reasons given, and the hypocrisy shown, but that is as far as it goes. Whilst facts inform faith, faith is ultimately a choice. In the fortress of his heart, man is made free with a God-given right to choose. And for each man, that choice is between his soul and its creator. If anyone would like to learn with me, there is the TVC Academy, where I offer courses and private lessons on reasoning, language skills, and more. And there is also TonyVCLow.com, where you can see my public profile, blog, books, and other works. For updates on my activity, you also have the option to subscribe to my mailing list. Links are given below. Thank you for your time.